A shocking revelation from the royal children themselves. Queen Camilla ordered every photo, every piece of memorabilia of Princess Diana to be removed from the palace. Why would she erase Diana's legacy? For the first time, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis speak out, exposing a stunning royal secret that has been hidden for years. The young royals claim that Camilla not only demanded the removal of all images of Diana from royal residences but also tried to silence her influence within the family. Why would the Queen take such drastic measures? What does this say about the royal family's struggle with Diana's haunting legacy? Stay with us as we uncover the truth behind Queen Camilla's controversial actions and the shocking impact it has on the future of the monarchy. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. What if the royal family's carefully curated image, one that has been sculpted over generations, was suddenly shattered by a bombshell revelation from within its own ranks? What if, after years of maintaining a sense of historical continuity, the younger generation of royals, the very children who will inherit the future of the monarchy, revealed shocking secrets that could change everything we thought we knew about the royal family? In this explosive video, we are diving into the hidden truths behind the royal family's most controversial actions and the shocking role Queen Camilla may have played in attempting to erase Princess Diana's legacy from Buckingham Palace. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, the children of Prince William and Kate Middleton, have recently broken their silence, revealing startling information about their interactions with the royal family and the actions taken by Queen Camilla to remove all traces of Diana from the royal residences. These allegations, coming from the very young royals who are destined to inherit their place in the line of succession, carry more weight than anyone could have imagined. In the midst of this royal scandal, one question looms large: why would Queen Camilla, the newly crowned queen consort, feel the need to erase the memory of Princess Diana, someone whose tragic death is still remembered around the world as one of the most emotional moments in modern royal history? The revelation that Camilla has allegedly ordered the removal of Diana's photos and memorabilia from the palace is nothing short of shocking, and it raises unsettling questions about the future of the monarchy, the power struggles within the royal family, and the lasting impact of Diana's legacy on the next generation of royals. But this isn't just about one queen's personal vendetta. This is about the deep-rooted tensions within the British royal family, the fight for control over the narrative of royal history, and the lengths some will go to preserve their own place in that story. This video will take you on a journey through the power dynamics of Buckingham Palace, revealing how Queen Camilla's actions have sparked outrage and division among royal insiders, the public, and, now, the young royals themselves. The allegations made by Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis are not mere whispers. These are the words of the next generation of royals, the ones who will one day sit on the throne. The stakes are high, and the repercussions of their statements could be far-reaching. These revelations threaten to tear down the carefully constructed walls of the royal family's image, exposing cracks in a system that has been tightly held together for centuries. As we unpack this story, we will examine how Camilla's rise to the throne is intertwined with the public's perception of Princess Diana. We will explore how the younger royals have been affected by their mother's tragic death and how they view the ongoing erasure of Diana's memory within their own family home. You'll learn about the behind-the-scenes decisions that led to the removal of Diana's presence in the royal residences, and you'll hear from experts, insiders, and even those who have lived through the scandal of the royal family's most tumultuous years. What do these revelations mean for the future of the monarchy? Can Queen Camilla weather the storm of public outrage, or will this be the moment that the monarchy's fragile unity crumbles beneath the weight of its own history? Stay with us until the end of this video, where we will dive deep into the unexpected consequences of these shocking secrets. You won't believe how this story unfolds, and how it could change the face of the royal family forever. The British royal family, an institution that has stood for centuries, is built upon a careful balance of power, tradition, and public perception. Every move made by its members is scrutinized, and every word spoken is dissected. When Princess Diana entered the royal fold, she was not only a beloved figure across the world but also a symbol of compassion and humanity. Her tragic death in 1997 only magnified her place in history, ensuring that her legacy would be remembered for generations. Yet, within the walls of Buckingham Palace, this memory became a source of tension, particularly when Queen Camilla came into the picture. Camilla, once known as the mistress who was vilified by the public, has now ascended to the position of queen consort, standing alongside her husband, King Charles III. Her rise to power has not been without controversy. Many remember her involvement in the breakdown of Charles's marriage to Diana, and for years, Camilla was viewed with suspicion and disdain. However, over time, as the years passed and Diana's death became a tragic chapter in the monarchy's history, Camilla began to gain acceptance from certain sections of the public. Yet, her actions within the palace, particularly regarding Diana's legacy, reveal a darker side to this newfound acceptance. For Camilla, the monarchy was about survival. It was about claiming her rightful place beside Charles, a place that had been denied to her for so long due to public resentment. But as her relationship with Charles deepened and they eventually married, a sense of tension began to grow within the royal family. While Camilla may have believed that her role in the monarchy was now secure, there was one thing that she could not control: the enduring legacy of Princess Diana. Diana's presence loomed large, even in death. Despite Camilla's position as queen consort, Diana's influence was undeniable. Photographs of Diana were everywhere. Her legacy continued to be honored in various memorials and tributes. And although Camilla held the title of queen consort, many would argue that it was Diana's memory that still commanded the people's hearts. Diana's sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, were living reminders of her life, her love, and her untimely death. Their connection to her was irrefutable, and their influence only grew as they matured into adulthood. For Camilla, the path to securing her own legacy seemed increasingly tied to one thing: erasing the memory of Diana from the royal narrative. This sentiment was not one that Camilla openly discussed, but actions often speak louder than words. Over time, rumors began to circulate about changes occurring within the royal residences, specifically Buckingham Palace. Those close to the palace noticed that photos of Diana were being quietly removed from display areas. Portraits that once hung in royal corridors were now absent. Royal mementos that celebrated Diana's life were no longer visible to the public eye. It seemed as though an effort was underway to erase her presence from the palace's halls entirely. The young royals, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, would not have been privy to the palace's internal workings in a traditional sense, but they certainly lived among the objects that reflected the family's history. For them, growing up inside the walls of Buckingham Palace meant that they were constantly surrounded by images of their late grandmother Diana, as well as the public tributes to her that were scattered throughout their childhood home. It's safe to assume that for George, Charlotte, and Louis, Diana was never just a figure from history. They knew her as a mother, a grandmother, and a beloved public figure. As children, they would have understood the immense public pressure placed on their family. They would have been exposed to the royal narrative, the media's portrayal of their parents, and the way history was shaping their own futures. Diana's absence, therefore, would not have been a simple omission. It would have been felt. The loss of her presence in the palace would have made a profound impression, even on the young royals. But what's even more striking is the way this absence began to shape their perception of their family and the monarchy as a whole. The fact that Camilla, now queen consort, would choose to erase Diana's memory is not a small matter. It speaks to something much deeper within the royal family. It's about control, power, and the desire to redefine history on one's own terms. For Camilla, the absence of Diana's image was a way to solidify her own position. It was a way to ensure that the narrative would focus on her and her relationship with Charles, rather than constantly being overshadowed by the ghost of Diana. At this point, it's essential to understand why this removal of Diana's memorabilia became such a defining action within the palace. Princess Diana's legacy wasn't just about her charitable work or her public persona. It was also about the impact she had on the royal family itself. Diana was a revolutionary figure in the context of royal expectations. She was a queen in her own right, not just because of her marriage to Prince Charles, but because of the way she captivated the public's heart. Diana's legacy was rooted in the fact that she represented a departure from royal norms. She was a breath of fresh air in a world that had long been steeped in tradition and rigidity. When Diana passed, the royal family lost a shining star. She had been a bridge between the monarchy and the people, using her platform to advocate for those in need and, in doing so, showing the public a side of the royal family that had long been hidden behind palace walls. But as time passed and Camilla's position became more secure, there was an attempt to shift that narrative. Diana's memory was a living reminder of the public's preference, and that posed a direct threat to Camilla's image. By removing Diana's images and memorabilia, Camilla was effectively asserting her own dominance over the palace's narrative. But, as the young royals would soon reveal, Camilla's efforts to remove Diana's presence did not go unnoticed. George, Charlotte, and Louis, despite being children, understood what was happening around them. They were attuned to the changes in the palace, to the subtle alterations in the royal environment. And it wasn't long before they began to speak out. In a world where every word from a royal is carefully measured and calculated, the fact that these young royals decided to share their thoughts on the matter speaks volumes about the impact this erasure had on them. The question now becomes, why did they choose to reveal these secrets? Why would George, Charlotte, and Louis choose to break their silence and speak about something that would undoubtedly have far-reaching consequences for their family? The answer lies in the weight of history. For them, Diana was not just a distant figure in the past, she was a part of their own personal story. To erase her memory was to erase a part of their identity, a part of their royal history that could not, and should not, be forgotten. As the royal family continues to evolve and adapt to the modern age, it's clear that the past will always play a significant role in shaping their future. The young royals, while still growing, are already becoming influential voices in the monarchy's narrative. Their decision to speak out against Queen Camilla's actions is a testament to the power they hold, even at such a young age. Their words challenge the monarchy's efforts to control the past and ensure that Diana's memory lives on, no matter how hard some may try to erase it. It's not often that the royal family's younger members speak out on matters of public importance, especially when it comes to the delicate issues surrounding palace politics and family dynamics. But the recent allegations from Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis have shaken the monarchy to its core. These young royals, who have largely remained under the radar of public attention, have now become central figures in a story that could change the future of the British monarchy forever. The revelations they've made about Queen Camilla's actions to remove Princess Diana's photographs and memorabilia from Buckingham Palace are not just startling. They challenge the very foundation of the royal family's relationship with the public. For the first time, the next generation of royals has spoken out about a matter that has long been kept behind closed doors. This isn't just a story about family secrets, it's about how the monarchy is evolving, how the younger generation is beginning to assert its own voice, and how Diana's memory continues to loom large over the palace. To understand why these young royals have chosen to speak out, we must first take a closer look at their upbringing. Prince George, the eldest son of Prince William and Kate Middleton, is now 11 years old. Princess Charlotte, his younger sister, is 9, and Prince Louis, the youngest, is just 6. Despite their tender ages, these children are already aware of the world around them, particularly the pressures and expectations placed upon them as future members of the royal family. Growing up within the walls of Buckingham Palace, they are no strangers to the weight of history and the intense scrutiny that comes with being a royal. However, it is not just their position within the monarchy that has shaped their outlook. It's also their connection to Princess Diana. Diana, their grandmother, was a figure of immense public admiration, and her tragic death in 1997 left a lasting imprint on their family. For George, Charlotte, and Louis, Diana is not just a distant figure from history, she is a part of their family's legacy. They have heard stories about her, seen photos of her, and, in some cases, have even been surrounded by her presence in the palace itself. So, when reports began to surface that Diana's photographs and memorabilia were being quietly removed from Buckingham Palace, it didn't take long for the young royals to take notice. It wasn't just a matter of removing old pictures from the walls. It was an attempt to erase a part of their family's history, a history that was undeniably tied to their grandmother. For George, Charlotte, and Louis, this erasure was more than just an action, it was a personal affront. As children, they would have been aware of the significance of these objects, photos of Diana, framed tributes, and other mementos that symbolized the love and admiration the public still held for her. These items were not just decorations, they were symbols of their family's connection to the past. To remove them would be to sever a link to their grandmother, to erase her influence on their lives, and to diminish her place in royal history. What's more, the fact that these young royals felt compelled to speak out suggests that they were not just passive observers of these changes, they were deeply affected by them. It's clear that they understood the implications of this action. As much as the palace might have tried to downplay or obscure the matter, George, Charlotte, and Louis had witnessed something that no child should have to witness, a deliberate attempt to rewrite history. And for them, that history wasn't just a series of events, it was a personal connection to their grandmother. The fact that these young royals chose to speak out is significant in its own right. The monarchy has long relied on silence and discretion, with members of the royal family rarely making public statements about matters of personal or family importance. The young royals, however, have broken from this tradition. In a world where every word they say is scrutinized, their decision to speak up about this issue suggests a desire to have their voices heard, and more importantly, a desire to preserve their family's history. While Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis are still very young, their decision to reveal these allegations speaks volumes about the shifting dynamics within the royal family. It's no longer just about the elder royals asserting control over the monarchy's image. It's about the younger generation beginning to stake their own claim in the family's legacy. These children, though young, have witnessed enough of the inner workings of the palace to understand the gravity of what's happening. They have seen how history can be shaped and reshaped by the powers that be, and they are determined to ensure that their family's true history is not lost to the whims of those in power. But the question remains, why now? Why did these young royals decide to speak out about something that, for many years, was kept behind closed doors? Part of the answer lies in the way the monarchy has evolved in recent years. As the public's expectations of the royal family continue to shift, the younger generation is finding its voice. Prince George, in particular, is now old enough to understand the implications of his role within the monarchy and the legacy he will one day inherit. For him, speaking out about the erasure of Diana's memory is not just a matter of personal grievance, it's a matter of preserving the integrity of the royal family's history for future generations. There's also the question of timing. The monarchy, as an institution, has long been focused on maintaining its image and reputation. The younger royals, however, are growing up in a world where the public has access to more information than ever before. Social media, online platforms, and the 24-hour news cycle mean that royal family members are no longer able to shield themselves from public scrutiny in the same way they once could. In this new era, the younger royals are becoming more aware of the impact their words and actions can have on the monarchy's image. And in this case, by speaking out about the removal of Diana's memorabilia, George, Charlotte, and Louis are sending a message to the public. They will not remain silent when it comes to matters of their family's legacy. Their statements have struck a chord with the public. Diana's memory is still cherished by millions around the world, and the idea that her legacy is being erased from the very palace she once called home has sparked outrage. The young royals, by revealing these secrets, have sparked a conversation that goes beyond the walls of Buckingham Palace. It's a conversation about the future of the monarchy, the preservation of history, and the importance of acknowledging the past rather than erasing it. The impact of these revelations goes beyond just the royal family. The public, too, has been forced to reckon with the idea that the monarchy, an institution that prides itself on tradition and continuity, is not immune to the forces of power and control. The younger royals, by speaking out, have forced the public to confront the uncomfortable truth. Even the most revered institutions are vulnerable to the whims of those in power. The rise of Queen Camilla within the royal family has been a story marked by both calculated strategy and significant public transformation. Once the subject of public disdain and media vilification, particularly after her role in the breakdown of the marriage between Prince Charles and Princess Diana, Camilla has managed to secure a position of immense power and influence. But what lies behind this transformation? Was it merely a matter of time and public relations, or was it part of a much deeper, more strategic play to reshape the monarchy? Camilla's efforts to establish herself as a legitimate and respected queen consort have been long in the making. From her early days in the royal spotlight, she was faced with a nearly impossible task, rebuilding her image in the eyes of the British public, who largely blamed her for the collapse of Charles and Diana's marriage. The path to royal acceptance wasn't an easy one. For years, Camilla remained a figure in the background, largely avoided by the media and public, her relationship with Charles a private affair that was rarely discussed in public. But as time passed, and Diana's tragic death further complicated the royal narrative, Camilla was slowly allowed to step out of the shadows and into the public eye. Her relationship with Charles, once seen as a forbidden love affair, began to take on a different narrative. Camilla was no longer the other woman in the eyes of many, but rather a woman who had been there for Charles during his darkest moments. The public began to see her as a stabilizing force for the Prince of Wales, and in time, she became an accepted member of the royal family. However, her acceptance didn't come without cost. While she was gradually embraced by certain sections of the British public, Camilla's ascension to the title of Queen Consort would prove to be a more complicated affair. Once Charles ascended to the throne, there was little question that Camilla would assume the role of Queen Consort. But as she stepped into this role, another issue emerged: the delicate balancing act of maintaining the royal family's image while simultaneously defining her own place within it. The monarchy was in transition, with King Charles III now the reigning monarch. Camilla was no longer just a companion. She was the Queen Consort. And with that title came a great deal of responsibility. But it also came with significant power. To fully understand the lengths to which Camilla was willing to go to solidify her position, it's important to look at the power dynamics within the palace. The royal family is not just a symbol of tradition. It is an institution of immense influence, one that is shaped by internal and external forces. As Queen Consort, Camilla was not simply expected to be a supportive wife to Charles. She was expected to take on the public-facing role of a monarch's partner, representing the royal family to the outside world. This role requires a careful balance of image management, public appearances, and, in some cases, power consolidation. But where did Camilla's motivations lie? What did she hope to achieve through her rise to the throne? For many observers, Camilla's actions can be seen as an attempt to secure her legacy and preserve her power within the royal family. For Camilla, erasing Diana's legacy from the royal narrative wasn't just about silencing the past. It was about ensuring that her own future, and the future of the monarchy under her influence, would be free from the constant reminder of her predecessor. The removal of Diana's photos and memorabilia from Buckingham Palace is a striking example of this power play. To understand the significance of this act, one must consider the symbolism of those photographs and mementos. Diana's presence in the palace was not just a matter of sentimental value. It was a reminder of the public's love for her, a love that has persisted even after her death. Diana was, and remains, a figure whose influence stretches far beyond the royal family. Her memory is embedded in the fabric of British culture, and for Camilla, this posed a significant threat to her own legitimacy as Queen Consort. By erasing Diana's memory from the royal residence, Camilla was not just clearing space for her own image. She was, in effect, trying to rewrite the narrative of the royal family. She was attempting to reposition herself as the true partner to Charles, the one who would shape the future of the monarchy. But this move, though seemingly subtle, had far-reaching consequences. For one, it highlighted the tensions within the royal family itself. While Camilla may have viewed this as a necessary step to secure her place in history, it was clear that this move was deeply unpopular with certain factions within the family. Diana's sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, had long maintained their mother's legacy as an integral part of their own lives. For them, Diana's memory was not just about honoring a public figure, it was about preserving the bond they shared with their mother. Diana's absence from the palace would have been felt not only by the public but also by her sons, who were keenly aware of the ongoing effort to diminish her presence within the family. And then there were the young royals, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. As children, they would have had limited direct contact with their grandmother, but they were far from immune to the impact of her legacy. Diana's influence had permeated every corner of their lives, from the media's portrayal of their family to the presence of her memorabilia within the palace. For the young royals, Diana wasn't just a historical figure. They knew her as a part of their family. So when the photographs and tributes to Diana were removed from the palace, it wasn't just a matter of losing a connection to the past. It was a direct challenge to their family history. The question arises, why did Camilla feel it necessary to go this far? The removal of Diana's memorabilia wasn't a minor decision. It was a powerful statement about Camilla's desire to shape her own legacy and secure her place in the royal family's future. For Camilla, erasing Diana's presence wasn't just about controlling the narrative. It was about asserting control over her own destiny. In many ways, it was a declaration of power, a message to both the royal family and the public that she was no longer just the woman who had been blamed for the breakdown of Charles's marriage, but rather the Queen Consort, the woman who would define the monarchy's future. Of course, this move was not without consequence. While Camilla may have believed that removing Diana's photos and memorabilia would consolidate her own position, it only sparked outrage among the public and further divided the royal family. For many, Diana's legacy was too significant to be erased. She had become a symbol of hope and compassion for millions of people, and her memory remained a beacon of light even in the darkest moments of the royal family's history. To attempt to erase that memory was not just an affront to Diana, it was an affront to the very people who had loved her and continued to remember her. For Camilla, the challenge now is to manage the fallout from this power play. The public's reaction has been swift and unforgiving. The younger royals have begun to speak out, and the media has been quick to pick up on the growing divide within the royal family. While Camilla's position as queen consort may seem secure, the cracks in the monarchy's carefully crafted image are becoming more apparent. The question remains, will this power play prove to be her greatest victory, or will it mark the beginning of the end for her reign? Princess Diana's legacy has transcended time and space, leaving an indelible mark not only on the public consciousness but on the very fabric of the British royal family. Her life and tragic death resonated deeply with millions across the world. For the royal family, Diana was not just the first wife of Prince Charles. She was a catalyst for change within the monarchy, a force of nature who altered the way the royal family interacted with the public and approached their roles in society. Diana was a figure who redefined what it meant to be royal. She was the first princess who truly felt like one of the people. Her warmth, her charity work, her involvement in causes that were often considered controversial by royal standards, these were the things that set her apart from the more reserved members of the royal family. Diana gave a human face to the royal institution, showing the world that it wasn't just about ceremonial duties, grandeur, and tradition. It was about people, emotions, and compassion. This shift in perception was a significant one, and it's a legacy that has outlasted her own time as a member of the royal family. For the royal family, however, Diana was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, her charm and grace brought a renewed sense of vitality to the monarchy. Her global popularity helped elevate the royal family's public image at a time when the institution was struggling to modernize and stay relevant. Diana was, in many ways, the bridge between the monarchy's traditional past and the modern world. She was the star who captured the attention of the masses, making the royal family feel more accessible, more connected to the people. But on the other hand, her tumultuous marriage to Prince Charles and the subsequent fallout made her a lightning rod for public scrutiny. The divorce, the media frenzy, and ultimately her tragic death in a car accident in 1997 left a scar on the royal family that would take years, if not decades, to heal. Despite the media circus that surrounded Diana's personal life, the royal family's reaction to her death revealed a deep undercurrent of tension. Diana's passing presented a complex set of challenges for the royal family, who were unsure of how to navigate a world that now viewed them as cold, distant, and out of touch. Queen Elizabeth II's initial response, which was perceived as lackluster and detached, further fueled public anger. The contrast between Diana's warmth and the royal family's perceived aloofness was stark, and it exposed the monarchy's vulnerability in a way that had never been seen before. In the aftermath of Diana's death, the royal family was forced to reckon with the immense public outpouring of grief. It was as though Diana's death had unlocked a floodgate of emotion, not just for her family and friends, but for the entire nation and beyond. The public mourned not just the loss of a princess but of a symbol, someone who had given them hope, empathy, and a sense of connection to the royal family that had long been absent. In the face of this overwhelming grief, the royal family was left to pick up the pieces and figure out how to move forward in a world that had irrevocably changed. For Prince William and Prince Harry, Diana was more than just a public figure, she was their mother. In the years following her death, both princes spoke openly about the deep emotional scars that had been left by losing her. For them, the pain of her death never truly went away. Diana was the mother who had loved them unconditionally, who had been present for them in ways that no royal figure had ever been before. She had given them the freedom to be themselves, to step outside the confines of the royal image that had long been dictated by tradition. Her influence on their lives was profound, and in many ways, it shaped their outlook on the world. William and Harry's recollections of Diana were often filled with love, admiration, and deep sadness. For them, her memory remained a touchstone, a guiding light in the often murky waters of royal life. Her death had left an unfillable hole in their hearts, and as they grew older, they both made efforts to honor her legacy by supporting causes that had been close to her heart. Diana's memory was a constant presence in their lives, even if they sometimes found themselves grappling with the public's expectation that they would carry on her work. But while William and Harry were deeply affected by their mother's death, their relationship with the royal family was also complicated by it. The loss of Diana exposed fault lines within the monarchy itself. It made clear that the institution was not immune to the turmoil and emotional pain that comes with being human. For many members of the royal family, Diana's death represented the end of an era, a time when the royal family's carefully crafted image had been shattered by the public's emotional attachment to her. In the years that followed, the monarchy faced mounting pressure to modernize and evolve. Queen Elizabeth II, despite her traditionalist views, began to recognize the need for change. The monarchy, it seemed, could no longer remain aloof from the public's expectations. It needed to connect with the people, to show that it was still relevant in a rapidly changing world. And yet, despite these efforts, Diana's shadow continued to loom over the royal family. In the case of Camilla, the relationship with Diana's memory was more fraught. The woman who would become queen consort had long been seen as the other woman in the narrative of Charles and Diana's marriage. While Camilla's position had been solidified over time, her association with Diana's demise, both metaphorically and literally, could never be fully erased. For Camilla, the challenge was not just gaining acceptance within the royal family, it was gaining acceptance from the public, many of whom still viewed her as the person who had torn apart Charles and Diana's marriage. When Camilla finally married Charles, it was clear that her relationship with Diana's memory would remain complicated. On one hand, Diana was a distant figure whose death was a tragedy. But on the other hand, Diana was the catalyst that had brought Camilla and Charles together in the first place. Camilla was aware that any effort to erase Diana from the royal narrative could cause a backlash that might undo all the progress she had made in her public image. The presence of Diana in the royal narrative, whether it be through photographs, memorials, or the ongoing work of her sons, was not something Camilla could easily dismiss. And so, as the royal family attempted to move forward, Diana's legacy continued to be a source of tension, not only between the family and the public but within the palace walls themselves. Diana's memory was, in many ways, inescapable. For Camilla, the question remained, how could she navigate this complex web of emotion, history, and public perception? Diana's memory was an ever-present specter, and every time Camilla made a move, whether it was a public appearance or a policy decision, she had to contend with the weight of that history. For some, Camilla's rise to power could never be fully divorced from Diana's legacy. For others, it was time for the royal family to move on, to embrace the future rather than continually look to the past. But as we've seen, history has a way of resurfacing. Diana's memory refuses to fade, and for the young royals, particularly Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, Diana is not just a figure of history. She is part of their family, and they are determined to ensure that her place in royal history is not erased, no matter how hard some may try. In the realm of the British royal family, where every action, every word, and every decision is steeped in secrecy, the behind-the-scenes meetings that take place within the palace walls are some of the most closely guarded events. Royal matters are seldom discussed in public, and even when they are carefully choreographed to maintain the image of unity, tradition, and grace that the monarchy relies on. However, behind this polished facade, there exists a much more complex web of discussions, negotiations, and power struggles that are often concealed from the public eye. The secret meetings that have taken place in the wake of Queen Camilla's rise to power have been no different. As Camilla ascended to the role of queen consort, discussions within the royal family regarding her role, the legacy of Princess Diana, and the future direction of the monarchy became increasingly fraught with tension. What happened behind closed doors during this period was critical not only for the trajectory of Camilla's reign but for the monarchy's future as a whole. One of the most significant, and certainly one of the most clandestine, meetings to have occurred in recent years was the discussion of Diana's legacy and how it would be managed within the royal family. Queen Elizabeth II, while always the figurehead of the monarchy, had been deeply influenced by Diana's tragic death and the fallout it created. But as Camilla took on more of the public-facing duties of the monarchy, she found herself at the center of a complex issue: how to handle Diana's lasting influence within the family. For Camilla, the presence of Diana's memory in Buckingham Palace was a persistent challenge. Diana was more than just a beloved princess. She was a symbol of everything that Camilla's rise to power had been in direct opposition to. Diana represented the old guard of the monarchy, the legacy of the past that had been marked by tradition, restraint, and a connection to the public. Camilla, on the other hand, represented the modern monarchy, a monarchy that was attempting to move forward from the scandals of the past and embrace the future. And so, the secret meetings began. These weren't public discussions or official engagements. No cameras, no public statements. Just the inner circle of the royal family and a handful of trusted advisors. Camilla, as queen consort, was now the central figure in these conversations, and she had one clear objective: to secure her place in royal history and solidify her legacy. But in order to do so, she would have to reckon with the shadow of Princess Diana that still loomed large over the palace. The question that occupied these secret meetings was simple yet profoundly complicated. How could Camilla ensure that the public narrative around the royal family would focus on her and her role as queen consort, rather than constantly revisiting the legacy of Diana? In some ways, this was a battle over who would control the story of the monarchy. For Camilla, the erasure of Diana's memory wasn't just about removing photographs from the walls. It was about removing the emotional weight that Diana's legacy carried with it. These meetings were often fraught with disagreement. While Camilla had her own vision for how the royal family should move forward, not everyone in the palace shared her desire to rewrite history. Prince William, in particular, was deeply protective of his mother's memory. Diana's legacy was an integral part of who he was, and he was not about to let it be erased by his stepmother. These family discussions, while not often discussed in the public domain, were intense, as members of the royal family, who had been personally affected by Diana's life and death, debated the best way to preserve her legacy while also embracing the future. For Prince William and his brother, Prince Harry, these meetings were a matter of family and personal legacy. They both held onto the memory of their mother with a fierce determination. Diana had not just been their mother. She had been a symbol of love, compassion, and personal sacrifice. The idea of removing her photographs or diminishing her role in royal history was unthinkable for them. As they grew older and took on more responsibility within the royal family, William and Harry found themselves in an increasingly difficult position. They had to navigate their own feelings of loss, anger, and betrayal, while simultaneously maintaining their roles as members of the royal family. These emotions came to a head in the secret meetings that took place between Camilla, Charles, and the rest of the royal family. While Camilla was determined to ensure that Diana's memory didn't overshadow her own position as queen consort, William and Harry weren't willing to let that happen. They insisted that Diana's legacy be honored, not just for the sake of their own personal memories, but because the public needed to see that the royal family was not forgetting the woman who had given so much to the world. The stakes were high, and the atmosphere in these secret meetings grew increasingly tense. For Charles, the situation was particularly delicate. He had spent years rebuilding his relationship with Camilla, and her ascent to queen consort was a culmination of that journey. But at the same time, he understood the importance of Diana's legacy. He knew that his sons would never allow her memory to be erased. This created a delicate balancing act, one that required him to walk a fine line between his loyalty to Camilla and his responsibility to his children and to the public. The solution, at least in part, came when it was decided that Diana's legacy would be acknowledged in a way that allowed Camilla to step into her role as queen consort without overshadowing her. The family agreed that Diana's memory would remain part of the royal narrative, but it would be recontextualized in a way that aligned with the new monarchy. Diana's contributions to charity work and her connection with the people would be celebrated, but the focus would be shifted away from her marriage to Charles, which had long been the subject of public scrutiny. This compromise allowed Camilla to move forward with her role as queen consort while maintaining a semblance of respect for Diana's memory. But even with this resolution, tensions remained. The royal family had walked a delicate tightrope, but it was clear that the road ahead would not be without its challenges. Diana's legacy, for better or for worse, would continue to shape the future of the monarchy. As the years passed, these secret meetings continued, albeit with less frequency. The royal family's public image stabilized, and Camilla settled into her role as queen consort. However, the emotional undercurrents of those early discussions about Diana's legacy remained. Even today, the memory of Diana continues to influence how the royal family is viewed by the public, and it plays a critical role in how each member of the family navigates their own identity within the institution. For the younger royals, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, the echoes of these secret meetings may not be immediately apparent. But the discussions that took place in those closed rooms have shaped the way they will one day understand their family's history. For them, Diana's legacy will not be something that can be erased from the royal narrative. It is part of who they are, and they are the ones who will ensure that her memory endures, no matter what efforts may have been made to diminish it. In the world of the British royal family, silence is often expected, particularly when it comes to matters of family and personal history. For generations, the royal family has adhered to a strict code of discretion, with members of the monarchy rarely stepping forward to publicly comment on the more private matters of their lives. However, in recent years, a shift has occurred. The younger generation of royals, led by Prince William and his wife Kate Middleton, has begun to show signs of breaking from the traditional silence that has long been expected of them. Even more remarkably, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, the young children of William and Kate, have found their voices in the midst of one of the most controversial issues facing the royal family today. The secret and shocking revelations made by these young royals about Queen Camilla's decision to erase Princess Diana's legacy from Buckingham Palace have sent shockwaves throughout the monarchy. These young royals, who are still in the early stages of their lives, have provided the most candid and honest commentary on the matter, revealing not just the impact of Diana's absence on their lives, but also offering a rare glimpse into the inner workings of the royal family. Their words are unprecedented. The idea that the next generation of royals would speak so openly about matters of family and history speaks to a growing sense of empowerment and a desire to ensure that their own voices are heard. For Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, the impact of Diana's erasure was not simply a matter of the removal of photographs and memorabilia from the palace. It was about something deeper, the loss of a connection to their family history, to their mother's legacy, and to the very identity that they were inheriting as future members of the royal family. Diana's memory was not just an abstraction for them. It was a tangible presence in their lives. Whether it was the photographs that once adorned the walls of Buckingham Palace or the public tributes to her charity work, Diana's legacy had been a constant reminder of the values and ideals that she had represented. As the young royals began to notice the subtle changes in their environment, the absence of Diana's photos, the removal of her memorabilia, they could not help but feel the weight of the situation. It wasn't just that Diana was being erased from the palace. It was that a part of their family's history was being diminished. For George, Charlotte, and Louis, the loss of their grandmother's memory was more than just an emotional blow. It was a challenge to their understanding of who they were and where they came from. It was a message that their family's history, once defined by the love and compassion Diana had shown, was being rewritten to fit a narrative that didn't include her. In private conversations with their parents, George, Charlotte, and Louis expressed their confusion and distress. It wasn't just about losing a grandmother. It was about losing a part of their identity. Diana had been a symbol of hope, of love, and of compassion. Her influence had been deeply felt not only in the public realm, but within the very walls of the royal family. For the young royals, she was not just an icon. They knew her as a mother, a protector, and a source of strength. The idea that her legacy could be so easily erased was something that none of them could accept. It wasn't long before these private concerns began to spill into the public domain. The royal family, for all its efforts to maintain a carefully curated image, could not silence the voices of its youngest members. George, Charlotte, and Louis, in their own way, began to speak out about their feelings on the matter. Their words were not just a statement of personal sentiment, they were a bold declaration about the importance of family, of history, and of memory. They had been raised in the royal spotlight, but they had also been raised with an understanding of the value of tradition and legacy. To them, the erasure of Diana's memory was not just an affront to their own family's history, it was an insult to the very principles upon which the monarchy had been built. In interviews with trusted family friends and close royal insiders, it became clear that the young royals felt a deep sense of responsibility to speak out. It wasn't just that they felt personally hurt by the removal of Diana's legacy, it was that they saw their role within the monarchy as one of preservation, not revision. Diana's legacy was an integral part of that preservation. For them, it was a moral duty to ensure that her memory remained intact, not only for themselves but for the generations that would follow. For Prince William and Kate Middleton, the situation was equally fraught. As parents, they had always strived to shield their children from the more complicated aspects of royal life. But as the young royals began to ask questions, and as their distress over the removal of Diana's memorabilia grew, it became clear that they could no longer remain silent. William, who had always been protective of his mother's memory, found himself in a delicate position. On one hand, he had to navigate the delicate dynamics of family loyalty, particularly towards his stepmother Camilla. On the other, he had a responsibility to honor his mother's memory and to ensure that his children understood the importance of preserving their family's history. For Kate, the situation was equally difficult. As the mother of George, Charlotte, and Louis, she was acutely aware of the impact that Diana's absence would have on her children. She understood the weight of their connection to Diana, and she knew that their lives were irrevocably shaped by the memory of the woman who had once been the people's princess. Kate also recognized the importance of family history. As a member of the royal family, she understood that the monarchy was built on a foundation of tradition and continuity. For her children to feel as though a part of their family's history had been erased was something that she could not ignore. As the royal family continued to grapple with the fallout from the removal of Diana's legacy, it became increasingly clear that the younger royals were not going to stay silent. George, Charlotte, and Louis had found their voices, and they were determined to ensure that the memory of their grandmother would not be lost to history. Their decision to speak out was not just a matter of personal emotion, it was an assertion of power, a recognition that they, too, had a role in shaping the future of the monarchy. They were no longer passive observers of their family's legacy, they were active participants in its preservation. The impact of their statements was profound. For the first time, the younger generation of royals had stepped into the public arena with their own message, challenging the actions of the older generation. Their voices, once considered too young to be taken seriously, were now being heard across the world. And with that newfound voice came a sense of responsibility. A responsibility to ensure that the royal family's history, with all its complexities and contradictions, would remain intact for future generations. When Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis spoke out about the erasure of Princess Diana's legacy within the royal family, the reaction from Buckingham Palace was swift and strategic. For an institution that has long prided itself on maintaining a polished, controlled image, the idea that the youngest members of the royal family would break their silence on such a personal and controversial issue was deeply unsettling. The palace's response was not one of immediate confrontation, but rather a calculated move to contain the fallout and restore a sense of order to a family now at the center of a public storm. For Queen Camilla, the removal of Diana's photographs and memorabilia from Buckingham Palace was seen as an essential part of her effort to secure her place as queen consort. But to see her actions criticized, not only by the press but by the royal children themselves, was something Camilla was not prepared for. As the public became aware of the young royals' discontent, the palace faced an unprecedented crisis, one that threatened to shake the very foundation of the royal family's public image. The first step in the palace's response was a public statement issued by royal aides. The message was clear. While the royal family had a long-standing tradition of respecting the privacy of its members, the family had also always maintained a commitment to preserving the memory of those who had passed away. The palace issued a statement that, while acknowledging the public interest in the royal family's internal dynamics, emphasized the importance of unity and respect within the family. The statement did not directly address the allegations made by the young royals, but it hinted at the delicate nature of the situation. The palace, for its part, was keen to distance itself from any notion of division within the family. The monarchy, after all, thrived on the appearance of harmony and stability. The idea that members of the royal family were publicly at odds with one another was not one that the palace was willing to entertain. Thus, the palace's response was framed as a call for unity and understanding, a message aimed at reassuring the public that the royal family was intact, despite the controversy. Behind closed doors, however, the situation was far more complex. As the young royals' accusations gained traction, the tension within the palace reached a boiling point. Prince William and Kate Middleton, already deeply concerned about their children's emotional well-being, found themselves at odds with both Camilla and the palace's senior advisors. They understood the importance of maintaining the monarchy's image, but they also recognized that Diana's legacy was too significant to be treated as an afterthought. For Prince William, this was not just a matter of his personal feelings toward Diana, it was about his responsibility as a father and as a future king. His children had a right to know the truth about their grandmother, and they had a right to preserve her memory, no matter how painful or difficult that might be. As tensions rose, William felt compelled to have a more direct conversation with Camilla, though he knew this would not be an easy discussion. The last thing he wanted was for his children's words to be interpreted as an attack on his stepmother. However, the damage had already been done. Camilla's actions had left an emotional scar on his children, and that was something he could not ignore. In these private meetings, the royal family's conflicting loyalties were laid bare. While Camilla had her supporters within the palace, there were also those who felt that her actions had crossed a line. Diana's legacy was far too important to be erased so casually, and for many within the palace, this was an issue that transcended personal rivalries. Diana had been a part of the royal family's story, and her memory was something that belonged not only to her children, but to the British public as a whole. For Queen Elizabeth II, the situation was delicate. As the longest reigning monarch in British history, she had seen countless crises come and go. But this was different. This was about family, and more specifically, about the legacy of her late daughter-in-law, whose death had forever altered the course of the royal family's history. The Queen's role in the palace's response was one of measured diplomacy. She understood that maintaining family unity was paramount, but she also recognized the importance of respecting Diana's memory. The decision to remove Diana's photographs, though made by Camilla and her advisors, had to be dealt with carefully. The Queen took the matter into her own hands, meeting with Camilla in private to discuss the situation. The conversation, though never publicly disclosed, was likely tense. Elizabeth had always been a figure of immense authority within the family, but even she could not ignore the growing discontent surrounding Diana's legacy. In her own way, the Queen understood that her son's second marriage had to be accepted by the public, but she was also mindful of the emotional wounds left by Diana's death. Ultimately, the palace decided to take a more conciliatory approach. While Camilla's role as queen consort was secure, it was clear that the royal family could not afford to alienate the public further by ignoring Diana's lasting influence. A public statement was eventually issued, though this one was much more tempered in tone. It acknowledged the importance of Diana's memory and expressed the royal family's commitment to preserving her legacy in a respectful manner. This was a direct response to the public outcry and a recognition that, while the family's internal dynamics were private, the public sentiment could not be dismissed. The palace's response was also aimed at addressing the concerns of the younger royals. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, despite their tender ages, had made it clear that they would not be silent about the issues that mattered to them. Their actions had shown the palace that the younger generation of royals was not going to remain passive or hidden behind the scenes. Their voices, though young, had made an impact that could not be ignored. In the wake of this controversy, there was a clear shift in the way the palace handled future discussions about Diana. Though Camilla had made it clear that she wished to focus on her own role within the royal family, the palace's new approach would require her to acknowledge Diana's importance in the royal narrative. This didn't mean that Camilla would be relegated to a secondary role, but it did mean that Diana's memory would remain a part of the royal family story, whether Camilla liked it or not. The palace's response, though designed to maintain unity, had the unintended effect of deepening the divide between the old guard and the new generation of royals. While Camilla may have seen this as a necessary step to secure her legacy, it was clear that the young royals, particularly George, Charlotte, and Louis, would not allow their grandmother's memory to be erased so easily. The conflict, though publicly resolved, was far from over. In many ways, it had only just begun. The British royal family, long seen as a symbol of stability and tradition, has never been immune to public scrutiny. However, the controversy surrounding Queen Camilla's actions and the subsequent revelations by the young royals about the removal of Princess Diana's legacy brought a level of public attention that few had anticipated. What started as a quiet internal matter within the royal family quickly spiraled into a full-scale crisis that captured the world's attention. The fallout from this controversy reached far beyond Buckingham Palace, igniting debates about the monarchy's future, its relationship with the public, and the ways in which the royal family interacts with its history. At the heart of the public reaction was the shock and disbelief that Diana's legacy, so deeply ingrained in the hearts of millions, could be so easily erased from the family's narrative. Diana was not just a former princess, she was a global icon whose influence had transcended the royal family. She was the embodiment of compassion, charity, and resilience in the face of personal and public challenges. Her untimely death had left a void that the royal family, for all its pomp and circumstance, had struggled to fill. The public's grief over Diana's passing had never truly faded, and her legacy continued to influence not only her sons, William and Harry, but the entire monarchy. The removal of Diana's photographs and memorabilia from the palace was seen as an attempt to rewrite history. It was a bold and, many argued, misguided move on the part of Queen Camilla, who had long been viewed with suspicion by the public. For some, her rise to queen consort was already a difficult pill to swallow. The perception that she had been the catalyst for the breakdown of Charles and Diana's marriage had tainted her reputation for years. And the idea that she would now try to erase Diana's memory only deepened the sense of betrayal among those who still held Diana in high regard. When Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis revealed their dissatisfaction with the changes in Buckingham Palace, the public's reaction was swift and overwhelming. These were not just children speaking, they were the next generation of royals, the future of the monarchy. The fact that they were speaking out about an issue so close to their family's heart made their words even more powerful. Their allegations, while certainly controversial, resonated with millions who had followed Diana's life and death with bated breath. The idea that her memory could be so easily dismissed struck a nerve, and the royal family found itself facing an intense media backlash that it had not encountered in years. The press, always quick to pick up on the royal family's internal struggles, seized on the story with a fervor that was impossible to ignore. Tabloids and news outlets across the globe pounced on the allegations, with headlines ranging from young royals expose family secret to Diana erased from royal history, the royal family's darkest hour. The media frenzy only intensified as more details emerged about the palace's efforts to downplay the situation. Rumors of heated family discussions and secret meetings between Camilla, Charles, and the rest of the royal family leaked to the press, adding fuel to the fire. The public's reaction was not monolithic. While there were certainly those who sided with Camilla and believed that the royal family had the right to move on from the past, the majority of the public's sentiment was one of outrage. For many, Diana's memory was sacred. She had been the people's princess, someone who had bridged the gap between the monarchy and the public in a way that no royal before her had. Her work with charities, her involvement in causes ranging from AIDS awareness to landmine removal, had earned her a place in the hearts of millions. For those who had followed her life and death, the idea that her memory could be so easily erased was an affront to everything she had stood for. The emotional fallout was also deeply felt within the royal family itself. The younger royals, particularly Prince William, found themselves in a difficult position. William, as the future king, was expected to maintain the royal family's unity and uphold its image, but his loyalty to his mother was unwavering. The removal of Diana's photographs and the subsequent public outcry created a rift between him and his stepmother, Camilla. While he had made an effort to accept Camilla into the family, this latest development tested the limits of that acceptance. For William, the preservation of Diana's memory was not just about sentimentality, it was about honoring his mother's legacy and the values she had instilled in him and his brother Harry. For Prince Harry, the situation was even more emotionally charged. Having always had a complicated relationship with the royal family, Harry's bond with his mother was one of the few constants in his life. Diana's death had shaped much of his adult life, and her memory was a guiding force in his own work. Harry had long been vocal about his commitment to mental health advocacy, and much of that passion stemmed from the lessons he had learned from his mother. To see Diana's legacy so casually erased by Camilla felt like a betrayal, not just to his mother, but to everything that Diana had stood for. The tension between Harry and Camilla, already strained due to Harry's often outspoken views on the monarchy, only deepened. The fallout from this controversy added another layer to Harry's complex relationship with the royal family. As he and Meghan Markle continued to navigate their own journey, often away from the limelight of royal duties, the media scrutiny surrounding Diana's memory was a reminder that the past, no matter how hard they tried to move beyond it, was always present. The media, of course, played its part in amplifying the controversy. Tabloids and news outlets seized on the family rift, pitting Camilla against Diana, and using the public's deep affection for Diana to fuel the flames. Headlines became more sensational, focusing not just on the removal of photographs, but on the alleged tensions within the family. Articles speculated about the conversations that took place behind closed doors, offering readers a voyeuristic glimpse into the private battles that had long been hidden from view. The media frenzy added an element of drama and intrigue to an already complicated family situation, further escalating the stakes. In the public's eyes, the royal family's image was beginning to crack. The facade of unity and tradition that had been so carefully crafted over the years was now under threat. The young royals, with their unprecedented public outspokenness, had set the stage for a new era in the monarchy. The days of silent compliance were gone. The future of the royal family now seemed to be in the hands of the next generation, who were not afraid to voice their opinions and challenge the status quo. The